Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video we are taking a look into a monster named Israel Keyes. But before we start, if you hear weird noises, it's the cat. Moving on. Israel Keyes was arrested in March 2012 and his arrest was related to the kidnapping of Samantha Koenig. Investigations on the case led authorities to Israel Keyes. During questioning, he realized he got caught and wouldn't be able to get away with it. So he confessed kidnapping Samantha and also killing her. My previous case was on Samantha and I'll put a link in the description box below. Check that one as well. This is somewhat a follow-up of that video. So, when he confessed being the kidnapper and also murdering Samantha, things turned really creepy and authorities found themselves in the presence of a serial killer. This guy had been killing for a while and all over the place. This guy was really bad. Do you want to know who Israel Keyes was? The guy who killed Samantha Koenig? So let's start from the beginning. Israel Keyes was born on January 7, 1978 in Cove, Utah. He had 9 siblings. His family was a Mormon, but when Israel was 5 years old, they left the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and they became fundamentalists and joined a white supremacist church. And like Uncle Vernon's sister said in Harry Potter, bad blood will out. Back to Israel. Israel and his siblings were homeschooled. His parents didn't believe in public schools. They didn't believe in modern medicine. They didn't believe the government. During childhood, he used to walk around with a pistol. He used to break into people's homes and rob them. He loved hunting, torture animals, and kill them. And he also liked to set things on fire. I think we all know Israel Keyes from a young age showed traces of a psychopath. In his later teenage years, he renounced his parents' religion and his father kicked him out of the house. When Israel was 20 years old, he took a high school equivalence test and then in July 1998, he joined the army. He liked the survival skills aspect of military training. Soldiers who served with him said he was quiet and kept to himself, and he also liked to drink a lot. In July 2001, he was honorable discharged. Israel rejected religion completely and he became an atheist. Between 1995 and 1997, Israel worked for a construction company. In 2007, he started a construction business in Alaska. He worked as a handyman, a contractor, and a construction worker. When he was stationed at Fort Lewis, south of Seattle, he got involved with a woman from the Makah Reservation. When he left the army, they had a baby. He lived 6 years with her at the reservation. The two broke up and he met another woman, a nurse. In 2007, Israel, his girlfriend, and daughter moved to Anchorage, Alaska. As I mentioned before, Israel Keyes' crime started when he was young. He used to break into people's houses, rob them, and set things on fire. Before he joined the army, he abducted a teenage girl on a beach along the Deschutes River. He dragged her to a campground bathroom, he tied her up with ropes, and he assaulted her. He was planning to kill her, but he didn't. She talked too much. On May 2001, while serving in the army, he received a DUI charge. Then he got a state charge for driving with a suspended license. And on April 2009, Israel Keyes robbed the community bank in Tupper Lake. Israel Keyes was a meticulous killer. He planned everything ahead. At a young age, he realized he could kill and SA someone and get away with it. He also was aware he wanted to act on his fantasies. He used his bank robberies to fund his killings. He traveled the country and even abroad to fulfill his fantasies of killing. He had rules: never kill close to home, never kill children or someone who had a child because he had a daughter, because he was such a good person. Not. He didn't have a type of victim. He killed randomly, but it was all planned, so he could get away with it. Another particular detail about this meticulous killer is he used to make murder kits and hide them around. The murder kit would include weapons, ammunition, materials to speed up the compositions of the body, money. He had everything. Even though he used guns to subdue his victims, he liked to strangle them because he liked to see them suffer. In February 2012, Israel Keyes broke his rule. He decided to kill someone close to home. He decided to kill Samantha Koenig, an 18-year-old who was working the late shift at the coffee stand in Anchorage, Alaska. He abducted her from the coffee stand, took her to his shed in his backyard. He took her ATM card. He S8'd her. Then he strangled her to death. He went on a vacation. He came back, took Samantha's frozen body from a cabinet. He sewed her eyes open. He put makeup on her face to make her look like she was alive. Then he took a Polaroid of her and sent a ransom request to her boyfriend using her phone. He cut her body into pieces and dumped it in the Matanuska Lake. He then used her ATM card several times, and the authorities followed the trail. Eventually, on March 2012, he was arrested in Texas in a traffic stop. He had Samantha's ATM card and her phone he used to send the ransom request. Israel was taken back to Alaska and authorities wanted to question him. But Israel liked to control everything, so whatever was coming out from those interviews, it was going to be on his terms. He knew he got caught on the disappearance of Samantha Koenig, so he confessed. And he decided he was going to confess his long list of crimes. But he stated he wanted to be executed within a year. He didn't want publicity around because of his daughter and all of the negative attention she would get. That's the only way he would talk. Israel Keyes didn't want to become a celebrity. He didn't want to be one of those famous serial killers, but he studied famous serial killers. He admired Ted Bundy, but he made sure he used his own ideas. He was an original. Israel called BTK serial killer a wimp because he professed remorse on his crimes. Israel called him a wimp. I think the BTK killer was just lying, manipulating the situation. First and foremost, the motive for the killings was because he enjoyed it, period. He stated he traveled all over the country and other countries to commit his crimes. He robbed banks, houses, and set things on fire, and this is how he funded his murders. He indeed had a long history of trips all over the country. He stated he had killed less than a dozen people, but the thing is, he didn't give names and location, and that's what authorities wanted, and they pressured him on the subject, so he was always ahead. During his army service, he decided he wanted to kill strangers. He stated his murders started when he was living at the reservation with the mother of his daughter. He said he had killed 4 people in Washington, a couple between 2001 and 2005, 2 separate victims in 2005 and 2006. He stated on April 9, 2009, he abducted a woman from a state on the East Coast. He transported her, he killed her and buried her upstate New York. Authorities believed he was taking a woman named Deborah Feldman, who had been missing since April 2009. They showed him a picture of her and he said he didn't want to talk about it. My question is, Was he ready to talk about it, or did he want to make it look like he killed her? On April 10, 2009, he said he abducted and killed a man. Then he robbed a community bank in Tupper Lake, New York. In 2011, he killed a couple named Bill and Lorraine Courier. But in this case, he gave details on what happened. He chose the couple because they had no children, no dog, and they had a house with an attached garage. He disabled the phone line before breaking into the house. He ambushed the couple while they were asleep. He tied them up. He abducted them, took them to a farmhouse. He shot Bill. He S.A. Lorraine, and then he strangled her to death. He buried the bodies in debris. Later on, the farmhouse was demolished, and the debris that had the bag that contained Bill and Lorraine's bodies were taken to a landfill. He had a hiding place in New York. He owned a cabin in the town of Constable. After he killed the Couriers, he moved all his murder kits to a new hiding place in Parrishville, New York. He also bought a police can so he could track the police. In February 2012, he decided to kill again, and his victim was Samantha Koenig. He abducted her, killed her, and then asked for a ransom, and eventually he was arrested. During the interviews, he talked about his rules. He killed far from home, never twice in the same place. He always paid everything in cash, turned off his mobile phone. He didn't have any connections to the victims. He would choose a victim, bury a murder kit in the area, then he would go back, commit the killing, hide the murder kit, then leave. Israel Keyes had planned to leave Alaska, travel through regions affected by storms, and find new victims using his job as a cover-up. He also planned to build a dungeon in his home to keep his victims. The deal with the authorities stated he didn't want publicity, but his identity was discussed in the media and Israel stopped talking to the authorities. But then the man who wanted the death penalty within a year tried to escape. On May 23, 2012, Israel Keyes tried to escape during a routine hearing, but he was subdued by a taser. He was then taken back into custody, and security around him increased, and there were more restrictions. However, on December 2, 2012, Israel Keyes was found dead in his cell. He had slit his wrists with a razor, and he strangled himself with a bedsheet. Under his body, there was a suicide note, which was basically an ode to murder. The FBI analyzed the letter and then stated the letter contained no clues. And this is Israel Keyes. He was a control freak. He was a monster. He was evil. And there's one thing he wanted that will never happen. His daughter most certainly knows her father was evil.